Oh, hey, sorry. I was checking my voter registration status for like the 35th time by now.
Yeah.
It's just becoming a thing. I'm Ari, and I'm here with Jon Fishman from Phish. Phish, can you believe it? I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to go online and check your registration status, but I'm a little worried that I'm becoming obsessive about it.
Well, it's nice that you can go online and check your registration, voter registration status, but it's pathetic that it has to be checked. I mean, I don't know why. It's just not a national policy that when you go to get your driver's license, you're automatically registered. When you go to do any legal documentation in your state for anything, you go to notarize something, there's someone to say, oh, and by the way, are you registered and would you like to register? It just should be the most automatic thing that we, but it's certainly for getting your license, that should just be automatic registration. I don't know why there would be any people in this country of any party that would stand in the way of voter registration or try to in any way hinder the addition of voters to the polls or to the ranks of legitimate voters. It's just, with a participatory democracy, you would think that would be the one nonpartisan issue that everybody would be on board with.
It almost sounds too easy when you put it like that. It makes so much sense.
The only interests that would try to discourage people from being automatically registered have to be people or interests that are anti-democratic and whose intent on some level is to hinder the democratic process overall. They don't want a democracy. They want something else. And that's the only intent that could possibly be behind the discouragement of adding voters to the ranks.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way to change that is to go out and vote for people who believe in things like that and support those causes, right? Isn't that how the process works, to put simply?
Yeah. I mean, you got it. It's unfortunate that we have a system that doesn't enable us better, and that we have to take it upon ourselves as citizens to be more proactive than we should have to become registered and all that. But it's by doing that, our generation, if we do that, then maybe eventually that will lead to people down the road having an easier time of it.
Right.
Exactly. So it's always a battle. It's always,
it's a
baby
battle.
steps.
It's a battle that you know. It's a battle that you know very, very well with your experience on the Board of Selectmen in your town in Maine. And I should mention, everybody can go to democracycomesalive.com to check your voter registration status and donate to HeadCount and support the musicians that are performing all day and into the night. In the next hour, we got amazing performances from Bruce Hornsby, New Master Sounds, Melvin Seals, Reed Mathis, just to name a few. But I am here with Jon Fishman, and I'm thrilled that you're here to shed a little bit of light and share some information with us about your experience as a selectman on the Board of Selectmen in your town in Maine. What was that like, Jon?
It was pretty cool. I mean, I got to know my town a little better. I got to know, just the ins and outs of, things from, the solid waste disposal issues to the dam issues in the lakes. It's just all it just, you get to know your town a little bit better. And actually, funnily, my daughter Rose and I started, her favorite series is Parks and Rec. And amazingly, I'd served for 3 years on the board, and then immediately following my term being up, I started watching that whole series. And I would say Parks and Rec is an incredibly accurate representation on some level. Like, they really did nail municipal politics and I mean, it's a parody, of course, but there's so many elements of it that are really true. So if anyone really wants to get an idea of what it's like, I mean, it's kind of, but it was a good way to get introduced to. Well, it's not anything I didn't learn in a certain way from being in a band all these years. It's just like joining another band, and all of the same principles apply. You have to be a team player. You know, you really don't get very far with my way or the highway attitude. You pick your battles. You know, I mean, it's like any it's two-way or a multi-party relationship. It's, you know, humans being humans,
Right.
and you know, I felt that being in a band for 36 years really trained me well. Uh, you know, and for Selectmen, and yeah, so it was not unlike being in a band in a lot of ways, except the issues you're dealing with rather than being musical, you know, are a little bit more real life. You know, in that you the difference about though in being a band is that you really do have to consider a much wider range of like whenever any decision you make about, let's say, what to do with the town's money, because that's
Right.
really your job, is to responsibly spend the town's money, and you really have to consider the economic reality of everybody in the town, and so it is a really kind of healthy mental exercise to consider literally every walk of life in the town, regardless of their politics, regardless of their you know, your personal relationships with them. It's a really good exercise in uh, thinking equitably and removing personal emotional issues. And yeah, that was different about it. And being hit, you know, hit with some. It's a very interesting thing when you realize the level of need sometimes in your community, and start thinking creatively about how to effectively serve everybody.
Yeah, I would imagine it's kind of like triage, you know, you're looking at all these problems and you're juggling how to
Yeah,
fix them and you know, to what degree and what you guys can do on a broader level, on a local level. It must be super cool to have really gotten involved in that way. And of course, we want to urge everybody to get involved with their local communities, whether it's at the polls or otherwise. And I should mention also that voter registration deadlines will start tomorrow. So if you haven't checked, which hopefully you have, please go for it. Right about meow would be a great time to do it. Jon, I also want to get your take on the ranked choice voting news that Maine has offered up to the U.S. recently. I know you've been a proponent of ranked choice voting for a long time, right?
yeah. Ranked choice voting is, I think, I mean, the more I've come to learn about it, I was actually introduced to it years ago in Vermont. It was under the title instant runoff voting. It's the same thing, but I somehow, you know, the first time around, I somehow didn't. The significance of it didn't really hit me. And but since being in Maine and having, for whatever reason, the chance to think about it more and realize the implications of it, I have come to feel that it is very possibly the single most important change that we could make in American politics for the betterment of our democracy and for the preservation of a truly participatory democracy, which is what this is supposed to be. It's a completely nonpartisan thing. It doesn't benefit one. It doesn't benefit the Republicans any more than it benefits the Democrats. But it does benefit a wider range of parties. It brings more parties into the fold. It benefits the voter. It helps get money out of it. It helps you know, reduce the effects of money in politics by its nature. It also, by its nature, pulls the political discourse back toward the center. And the way it does this is the central way in which this does this is by eliminating vote splitting. So in other words, the way we vote now, which is called plurality voting, you go in and you vote for, you know, if there's three choices or four choices or five choices, you vote which is your favorite choice. That's it. You vote for one candidate. And so if in an election there are three candidates, and let's say you have one on the right, and then you have two that are more left or center left, the ones on the left will split the vote, and often the person on the right will get in to office just by default of the left having been split. And then the best examples I use of this in its nonpartisanness are the Clinton HW election of 92. Ross Perot was a third party. He took 19% of the vote, mostly from the right, which arguably cost George H.W. Bush that election. Likewise, Ralph Nader ran during the George W. Bush and Al Gore campaign in was it 2000? And since Nader took, I can't remember what amount he took, but he took enough from the left that it arguably cost Gore the election. The Supreme Court decided that one. So in a ranked choice voting situation, how it goes would be this. Let's take the 92 election. You would have, if you wanted Ross Perot, you could vote for Ross Perot as your first choice. You rank your choices. You don't just vote for Ross Perot. You would vote for him first. You'd vote for, let's say, George H.W. as your second choice and Bill Clinton as your third choice. When they tally the votes, if nobody gets, the winner has to get 50%. So you also, another great thing about it is you have to get a true majority. If nobody achieved 50% or greater, then they would, Ross Perot, let's say, would come in third place with his 19%. He would be eliminated. They would then look at all the voters who voted for him as their first choice. Who did they vote for as their second choice? And probably the majority of those votes would have gone then to George H.W. In other words, your vote doesn't just end up helping. Oops, sorry. Somebody call me on the other line here. You there? Oh, sorry. In other words, all votes eventually do go to somebody in the order that the voter prefers they go, right? So it's not like the losing votes just get tossed out.
Right.
If you chose the third place, if you chose a guy who comes in third place, your vote then goes to whoever you chose as your second place. That would have probably put George H.W. over the 50-yard line, and he might have been president. Same could have been said for, the Gore W election with Nader. So what's beautiful about that is you can now go into the voting booth and vote your heart, not your fear, right? So right now, if I really want, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Right.
But let's say if Bernie Sanders were, if we had ranked choice voting, Bernie Sanders would have never had to have joined the Democratic ticket. You could have the Green Party, you could have the Independent Party, you could have the Democrats, Republicans, and I could vote for Bernie Sanders. And if he didn't win, if I voted for, Joe Biden as my second choice, then, my vote would then go to him, and it would go in the order that I preferred. My vote wouldn't get split. I could vote for who I really wanted and know that wouldn't effectively go to Trump instead, So that's the problem we have with vote splitting and plurality. And it's what's got our political system to where it is today. It's not the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. It's not any particular voters, it's how we vote. It's not who we're voting for. It's how we vote for them. And
right.
So, I can go on, and I know I probably shouldn't, but when you start to really look at it, like the money in politics thing. Well, here, let me just finish this one other thought.
Please,
okay?
go for it.
Which is now, think about third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties. Every year, the Green Party has to go out in some states, even though they're established, but they never get that 5% threshold. To stay on a ballot, to be automatically on a state ballot, you have to get 5% of the vote. But because people are afraid to vote for maybe a Green Party candidate because they don't want their vote to effectively help the exact opposite of what they want, they might, begrudgingly, so we, year after year, we go into the voting booth, we're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, right? Ranked choice voting gets rid of voting for the lesser of two evils. You vote for who you want in the order you want them. Now, let's say that's a third party. Let's take the Green Party. Green Party now will have a much easier time getting that 5% threshold. That means they're going to be there on all 50 states every election cycle. Instead of every 4 years having to go get their candidate on the vote, Now, knowing that I can vote for the Green Party candidate and knowing that that candidate, voting for that candidate isn't going to effectively help the exact opposite side they want, then they might get 7%, they might get 12%. In ensuing elections, they then start able to build a foundation. And sooner or later down the road, you start having third, fourth, fifth parties that are actually viable, okay? Now, Donald Trump can't just come out and speak to only his hardcore right people and his hardcore supporters. He has to appeal to the second and third place voters who might give him some, has to give them a reason to vote. Same for Bernie Sanders. He can't just come out and speak to the left, the most left among us and the most liberal among us. He has to also speak to people who are a little more conservative, and he has to attract them too. So this is what I mean by it brings the discourse back toward the middle. Again, now imagine you're Sheldon Adelson and you're sitting in your penthouse in Las Vegas and you're wondering who to throw money at. Well, maybe one of the most honest things that Donald Trump ever said in politics was, when I was a businessman, I paid both sides. I paid the right because they're the ones that give me the tax breaks I like, but I paid the left too because I wanted them to represent my interests in case they won. Well, if you're a rich person, a businessman, and you want to rig the political system in your favor, throwing your money around, you just pay both sides. It's a 50-50 shot. Now, if they're a viable third party, fourth party, fifth party, now where do you put your money? Now you're starting to get less bang for your buck. Your interest in throwing a ton of money into the election starts to go down. I'm not going to say it's going to eliminate the corrupting influence of money, but it certainly lowers people's motivation because the election becomes less predictable, and no one party is capable of appealing to just your particular sensibilities, because they've got to talk to second and third place voters too. They've got to appeal more to everybody. And so now, as the rich guy, I'm less inclined to go throwing more money around. Without Congress having to change a single law about campaign finance things, it just automatically plays into that. And like I said, the discourse is brought back to the center. Anyway, so there you go. And that's really it in a nutshell. And in Maine, and it also really helps get rid of entrenched, corrupt politicians, people who are career politicians. And then I think you would see less people stay in office for 40, 50 years if they aren't truly serving the public. You can't just get clever at serving just your constituency. You end up having to kind of, so now we have in Maine, we've seen, because we have ranked choice voting for our senators, our congressmen, and for president this year, you start to see the candidates have to come out and really do the work again.
And you've seen an immediate impact locally?
Well, the last round, we had Bruce Poliquin, who was a congressman who had for a long time kind of figured out what his niche audience was and really catered to them. And he was the first casualty of ranked choice voting, was that he had sort of he failed to speak to the general public as much as he should. And he lost his seat to Jared Golden, who is a vet. He's not, a lefty or right. He's a very moderate guy. I mean, Jared Golden as a candidate is very reflective of what ranked choice voting yields. What ranked choice voting yields is a truer representation of the public sentiment, which, as we know historically as a country, we tend to be a pretty centrist country. We've got the extreme left, we've got the extreme right, which is what plurality voting is yielding us for candidates, but when you apply a system where people get to rank their preference, like you would rank your favorite guitar players of the last 50 years or your favorite, ice cream flavors or whatever, now that you have to rank these people and these people are subject to the individual voters ranking, it's not surprising at all that the guy who replaced Bruce Poliquin, who was a pretty farther right candidate, and who won a couple of elections by the left's vote being split. So, he won with 38% of the vote, which that's the other thing. Plurality voting allows candidates to get in with 38% of the vote, 32% of the vote, right?
Yeah.
Jared Golden had to have 50% of the vote to win with ranked choice voting. So that means that as a candidate, it's not surprising that his policies are more reflective of a center moderate opinion. He's not that far left. He's not that far right. I really like the guy about in a lot of ways. There's some things I disagree with. I think that's pretty much where society would prefer it, I think the average voter prefers that. And I think with ranked choice voting, that is, you get that more accurate reflection of the society's true feelings and true sentiment. And so, he's a perfect example of that. Right now, we've got Sarah Gideon and Lisa Savage running against, on the left, running against Susan Collins. Lisa Savage is further left. I like her. I mean, personally, I know this is a nonpartisan, discussion, but, I'm just saying that would be my preference, a little more of a lefty. Sarah Gideon is a more center candidate. Susan Collins has long represented the further right in the state. But again, in a normal election, a plurality election, Susan Collins would almost be a shoo-in because we've got a center and a left candidate who are going to more or less split the vote of the Democratic vote between them. And Susan Collins would run away with, 30-some% of the thing again. We had 10 governors in the state of Maine, independent, Republican, and Democrat, all of them across the board over a 10 governorships. All of them got in with less than a 50% majority. And the other thing that's really great about ranked choice voting is it does produce a mandate. A candidate who wins through ranked choice voting truly can stand up in front of their public and say, listen, I've been given a mandate by the people. I really have. And have that be factually true. So, and the last thing I'll say about it is, now imagine yourself as the voter. Right now, we have voter apathy. One of the reasons I'm talking to you right now is because we have to go and try to get people to come out and vote. Get off your ass and go vote. Everyone we can think of, try to get them out there to tell people to vote. Now, a lot of the reason people don't vote is because they don't feel like they have, you see it all the time, the chatter online. Well, it's, they both parties suck. Lesser of two evils, blah, 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 blah. That's what you have become, right? That produces apathy. And that gives the scoundrels who don't want to support democracy the edge. Because if you and I don't go out and vote and we don't want to participate, that gives the people who are more than happy to make the decisions for us more ability to grab that power. Now, if there's a Green Party, there's an independent party, if there's other parties that become viable through ranked choice voting, now as a voter, there might be a candidate that I actually like. Now I might, a voter that I might, as a voter who might not ordinarily go out and vote, I'll go out this year to do that. Okay, the more you have that, the more participatory the democracy. Again, think of candidates. Think of it from the candidate side. Right now, if you're a third-party candidate, everybody's going to freak out on you, and if their side loses, they're going to blame it on you, right? If it's Ross Perot, the right just hated that guy, like he ruined it, and everybody we know with Ralph Nader, everybody made him out to be some sort of a monster because he ruined it for the left. Okay, it's not their fault. The fault is how we vote. It's in the voting system. That's where the fault lies.
Yeah.
If Ralph Nader, right, it wouldn't have been his fault. It wouldn't have been Ross Perot's fault. So now you have people that are excited to vote for Nader, excited to vote for Perot, or fourth parties or fifth parties. Now they get out and vote. If you're a candidate, you're not being made into a pariah. So we now have a situation where people are more willing to throw their hat in the ring. They're more willing to go become candidates. Someone says, hey, Fishman, you got a big mouth. Why don't you go run for office? Well, I don't want to ruin it for the person. I don't want to ruin it for the person who has an actual chance, who's going to get the candidate I don't like, the entrenched politician who I don't like. I'm not going to go run against someone who's going to have a better chance because they'll call me the spoiler. Okay. But if I'm not a spoiler now because of that ranked choice voting, oh yeah, sure. Okay. I'll go throw my voice in it.
Problem solved.
And problem solved. Right. So now you have more interest in both people. Now you have more voices willing to get into the argument, into the the discussion on the candidacy side, and you have more choices for voters to possibly be motivated to go vote for. So, I mean, there's literally nothing bad about this, and it's completely nonpartisan. And I think anybody, again, that would be truly interested in improving our democracy and ensuring that the voice of the people is what generally leads our country, rather than the voices of the few or the powers that be or those that would want to usurp the power, which there always will be in societies throughout human history. Power is one of the most intoxicating things, and it's always going to be tempting, and there's always going to be people who are going to be in position to grab more than their share, and there will be those that will. And unless you have a system that functions to prevent that, you stand the chance of always losing it. Ranked choice voting is a very, very effective protective measure against those that would want to discourage the participation of a democracy.
Right. Gotcha.
There you go. There's my spiel.
Dude, I love it. Thank you for explaining it to my small brain personally. I love hearing it from you, and I love your passion on the subject, and we definitely appreciate it. And it also stands true for Bernie supporters out there who are wary of voting without him in the race. You know, you were a big supporter of Bernie Sanders. What's your take, and what would you say to people like that who are sitting at home frustrated and maybe have some of that apathy?
Well, I mean, it's plurality voting. We have a lesser of two evils. In my opinion, Joe Biden is the lesser of two evils. He's not my favorite. Look, I don't blame anybody, any Bernie supporter who is discouraged by the choices that are offered. I don't blame him. I am too. For me, there's a clear choice of, I feel like, this guy's a better choice. There's people out there that feel Trump's a better, but let's face it, again, because of the system of voting that we have, we are all shoved into the left or the right pen, and the left gets more left and the right gets more right. And that's not who we are as a people. We are a more moderate, center thinking people. And, but because of the system of voting that we have, we're so yeah, it is, but it's the lesser of two evils. But in my opinion, I mean,
participation
you have to
is the
participate.
Key. Right.
If you don't participate, then it is always, and I'm not naming names here, okay? This is not Trump or Biden. This applies to any election cycle in any year throughout history. The lower the participation, the greater the apathy, and the less the participation, that always benefits the powers that would want to take democracy away from you. It does not benefit the powers that would give the chance for democracy to live another day. That's the thing. If you don't vote, you're aiding a system, you're aiding an eventuality where vote no longer exists.
Full stop. It's true.
That's
story.
it. And it's got nothing to do with the lesser of two evils is always the one you perceive to be the one that will allow democracy to live another day. That's always the lesser of two evils. You don't have to put a name on it. It's always that choice every election cycle. Is it discouraging to only have two choices? Yes. Does it produce apathy? Yes. If you give in to that apathy, will that improve the chances of that eventuality of the eventuality that you lose the vote altogether? Yes. So yeah, unfortunately, you got to deal with the lesser two evils until you can get ranked choice voting in place. And we're the first state. Who's going to be the second state? That's my question. I want to see what's going to be the second state, right? And who's going to be the third state? And there isn't one. I guarantee you that any state that gets this, they're not going back. Their voting public isn't going to go, that sucked. That ranked choice voting, that really, I mean, there's no one's ever, it's like the dawning in the mind, you go, oh yeah, wait a minute, that is better. And that will be the effect. It's like universal health care. I mean, if we actually got it, it's not like we go, yeah, we don't want that anymore. If that were true, then the Republicans would have already mowed down the affordable care, would have already gotten rid of the one thing about it is the pre-existing conditions. That's the one thing that even the hardest core right, doesn't want to actually, well, I don't want to get rid of the pre-existing conditions thing. Oh, hold on one sec.
That's cool. That's a cool sculpture. I like it. Your art game is on point, Jon, for sure. And we appreciate the discourse and the discussion and the conversation, and everyone sends their love your way. We hope that you're doing really well. And again, I just want to thank you for chiming in on the topic. And we're going to be interested to see what happens in Maine and keep our eyes on what's going on up there and how ranked choice voting impacts the state and the legislation in the years to come. And hopefully that there will be, other states that follow. If you had to guess, what's the next state? Throw it out there quick.
Well, there's a huge effort going on in Massachusetts, and I just want to give a shout out to the people that are working really hard to get the ranked choice voting on the ballot in Massachusetts. There have been a lot of people that have resisted it. Again, the people that resisted are the ones that don't want the people to have the power. They want to keep the power. So Massachusetts is looking really good. I've heard about some other states, but I'm a little bit more update on Massachusetts, and I've kind of participated in some of their efforts there, and I'm hoping to do more.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. Well, it's super exciting, and we can't thank you enough for hanging out with us here on Democracy Comes Alive. Let's go on a little bit of a psychedelic adventure right now through the galaxy with Reed Mathis and Electric Beethoven.